been some calls for changes on how the annual COD cycle has been working for ages, but recently one thing that I think could be very beneficial isn't necessarily about releasing a Call of Duty game every year, but rather separating the COD experiences from a yearly cycle we're currently in. One that breaks the game, takes months to correct, and then finally gets in a good spot, and then bam, repeat the whole cycle all over again. So how do you do this? Well, for many, this comes down to disconnecting the Warzone and premium experiences. So let's discuss today why this could be beneficial for the game and the likelihood of this happening. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Black Ops 6 and other FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, let's get into it. So the big thing with Warzone is that it's been this great through line since Modern Warfare 3, connecting everything that it touches in the COD franchise. It's been the heavy focus since then, and actually only until recently I feel like we've kind of started to see more favorable content pushed towards multiplayer and not necessarily Warzone having all of that focus from the developmental and marketing side of things. Since Modern Warfare 2019, everything's gone through Warzone. Content integrations, map creation and utilization in a lot of areas, i.e. maps being shared from the big map experience that you see every year. And I mean, the very reason why Warzone 1 servers aren't online, and we saw this switch to Warzone 2.0 and the current unified engine, all comes down to Warzone. Warzone is the singular, let's say, catalyst for these changes. I wouldn't say singular reason, as things like unified engines do make workflows between studios way easier, picking up where other studios may need help or whatever the case, but main catalyst that really sparked this idea of unifying everything and using something to be the basis of everything, that's about where all roads lead back to. But lately it's been a case of where all existing issues in Warzone, all the existing discussion on the state of the both premium Black Ops 6 experience and Warzone experience, it's been, let's say, frustrated. People are really looking at this year and being like, why are we doing this again? To a ton of the problems, so the question does end up having some valid weight of what if Warzone was standalone? It's been posed, and frankly, I think that there'd be a lot of upside to that. Here's why. One of the big things is no mechanic change shock. This was something that they seemingly tried to do with the unification of the Modern Warfare 2 engine and everything going forward with Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops 6, and whatever comes in the future, but Omni Movement most recently is one of those things that, again, it was that sort of system shock for some mechanic changes. There are plenty of different things you could point to, Omni Movement probably being the biggest one, but with that comes the sort of larger piece to the puzzle where each individual integration every single year has developmental setbacks. Every single year you look at this, you could pinpoint something. Black Ops Cold War's integration, the balancing was an absolute mess, which at that time was actually something that did make a ton of sense because you went from different engines in those Black Ops Cold War premium games to what was then Modern Warfare 2019. Vanguard, you had the whole Caldera situation where that map and the integration was genuinely broken. Modern Warfare 2 was kind of an off year because it was its own standalone thing, so you didn't have an integration per se with that, but you did end up having a sort of entirely different game in Warzone 2.0, which caused a bunch of setbacks in and of itself. Modern Warfare 3, the entire year was essentially, let's revert these changes we saw in the past year and get back to where we were. And then Black Ops 6, obviously, we've seen a ton of different issues, whatever it may be within this integration since the Season 1 launch. So every single year we have mechanic-related errors. We have weapon integration-related bugs and balancing issues. We have this issue with removal of quality of life adjustments, which personally has never made sense to me in the sense of like, why don't they plan ahead for this kind of stuff? Because why this happens is the integration launch build is a build that was being worked on for months before it actually is shipped, because it is such a major overhaul that they do need to be working on this so far in advance. So seasons 4, 5, and 6, quality of life changes that are added in, they're usually pretty good in the Warzone integrations at that point. Those don't really make the cut because they would have been built before those seasonal introductions. So these sorts of setbacks are huge every single year, but if you have Warzone be a standalone item, none of that stuff has to happen. You can end up adding weapons and integrations, sure, but you don't have to change any mechanic-related things. Quality of life items can end up persisting all throughout the entire year and then continue to be built on. It also would allow things to be fixed in a more timely manner, I personally think. You then don't have to check to see if things work from one studio to the next, sort of having this multi-level verification for these changes. Raven, for theory's sake, who would be in charge of this, could just have the agency to be like, okay, we need to get this fixed. It can end up being adjusted. I think probably the best example of this is like weapon balancing. To have a uniform feel, most weapons are pretty closely tuned from multiplayer to Warzone, with maybe some slight differences, and the biggest of why they'd feel different is armor versus standard HP and multiplayer versus Warzone. But most of the times, the weapon tuning has to go through both games and both studios, not just one. But even things like bugs with certain items that require a fix but need approval from all parties could be expedited if you don't have that in the way. You could essentially vault items also if you needed to without having to affect one game or the other. Another benefit, I think, would be no necessity for prestige. And this is one that I personally don't care as much about, but it was something that was an interesting level of discussion, I think, here with the integration, because everybody was super happy for the prestige system to return in Black Ops 6, but how that translated into Warzone was an entirely different story, and something for Call of Duty that was never actually something we've had to encounter before. I feel like this was an oddity because we saw this classic prestige system in Warzone, that ranking up and losing out on weapons, builds, and all that kind of stuff in Warzone is an entirely different world than multiplayer. While we've seen the prestige system in Call of Duty BR before, it wasn't the same exact level. Black Ops 4 and Blackout saw a prestige system, but it was a true BR, meaning that everything was random from when you dropped in to everything you'd see throughout the entire game. You had no level specific unlocks because weapons you didn't have unlocked were still in those ground loots and crate loots. So whether you're level 1 or prestige master, the loot, attachments, perks, and all, you all had the same ability, equal opportunities as the next player, just depending on where you dropped, and again, the RNG of it all. Nothing was impacted by your rank. So instead, if this was something that was disconnected, you could make it like an annual ranking system or prestige system, where in Warzone, you could have a disconnected and entirely different ranking system each year than, say, the premium Black Ops 6 multiplayer experience. This would allow you to end up having things that you could continue that prestige system, but be a sort of automatic prestige at levels 100, 150, 200, and so on, where just like the seasonal prestige system, you would cross over into a new prestige, but you wouldn't relock anything, and you also wouldn't end up having anything being time gated via seasons. So like, you wouldn't just see levels 100 to 200 in season 1, 201 to 300 in season 2, and so on and so forth. You could just go upwards of perhaps level 1000, and each prestige is another 50 levels on top of that. So similar to Black Ops 4's prestige system and the seasonal prestige system, not locking items but still gaining that additional prestige, but in a sort of hybrid system between the two. But okay, how likely is this to happen? Well, the point of Warzone in the first place is to generate conversions to the game. So what would it do if Warzone was separate? Well, it still could be separate, but not. Things like your weapons, camos, operators, and all that kind of stuff would still be attached to your accounts, so really the best way to rank up your weapons and all would still be through that premium game, and I think anyone that plays both would agree, and anyone who's doing that, it wouldn't impact them. Honestly, I don't think that you'd see much an impact on players to begin with. I mean, if anything, it'd make it easier to play for players that end up having the standard set of mechanics and feel to Warzone that not too much would change if you are already jumping back between games, but if you're a solely Warzone experienced player, it might be something that just makes it actually easier to end up playing. But will it happen? Honestly, probably not. As cool as it is, I personally have zero hopes for this to be the case, because the entire basis of Warzone 2.0, think about this, the generation of Call of Duty at least 4 years in advance in terms of planning, it was built out on the same engine, same tool sets, to do the exact opposite of what the community is proposing. This was the entire basis for the Warzone 2.0 situation. All this infrastructure was created to support the very thing that we're saying shouldn't be the case. At the very least, if it's something that they're sort of reevaluating here, I wouldn't expect this until at least the next cycle reset, which would be probably Infinity Ward's next game in 2026. Anything this year or next, definitely not expecting to happen. And even then, it's still probably a long shot. For us, it's something that is annoying to have these issues, to have sort of any hurdles that we'd consider here at this, but for an executive team and a developmental suite like this where everything's shared, it's probably something that they see it more beneficial than not. So even while these problems do persist, it still is not seen as enough to warrant an entire changeover and to separate the two. So will it happen? Maybe one day, but unfortunately, I'm not expecting that to be anytime soon. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think? Would you like to see Warzone as a standalone thing here, not separated year over year to whatever mainstream or premium title there is in the Call of Duty franchise? let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you find it at all insightful, you like these kind of discussions, feel free to drop a like. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 6 and other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.